So next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Julia Verne. I'm lucky enough to be doing the master's course at King's College currently, and I've recently heard Julia lead a totally inspiring workshop on a similar theme to that you'll hear this afternoon. Julia is a very accomplished public health consultant. She developed the National End-of-Life Intelligence Network, sharing vital national data. She has multiple interests in medicine, and particularly how society faces death.
This is a bit of a tinny bell, okay? No, it would be more like, it doesn't do the toll. So John Donne, the very famous poet, said, "Ask not for whom the bell tolls." Back in the old days when the bells would toll when somebody died to announce the death, it tolls for thee. So this is going to be the subject of my workshop. Normally when I do it at King, sorry about the microphone, it's about an hour and a half. So I'm going to squeeze this into 25 minutes. So there'll be lots of action. You can shout out, okay? Don't be polite. When asked questions, don't worry to put up your hand or just call out. And the other introduction is, my name is Julia, and I too will die. Does that sound a bit like an AA meeting? Well, maybe we should, we're going to adopt something a little bit similar because we're going to have some house rules as well. So Marcus Aurelius is one of my favorite philosophers. He's written a lot about reflections on death. But this one is interesting, and it's a theme I'll come back to. So he says, death smiles at us all. And the only thing we can do is to smile back. So ground rules, it's a bit like an AA meeting. We'll keep confidentiality and respect each other. People might have different views about what's important or what they would like. Silence is, of course, supportive, but do get involved if you feel able. And there is no such thing as a silly question or a silly idea, as we've already heard from our colleague, the funeral celebrant. So the aim is to consider why reflecting on our own death might be important, to do a bit of reflection on what we think about our own deaths, that only if you want to, otherwise think about something else or leave. And there'll be a potpourri of reflection. Some will be philosophical, some will be ethical. We'll focus on a little bit of detail about funeral planning, wills, legal power of attorney. And we will also think a little bit about our potential. I'm going to focus more on existentialist needs. I won't touch at all on religious needs because there are multiple and I haven't got time. But behind religious, there's spiritual and there's existentialist. And often, as we were hearing earlier, those are some of the most challenging areas to support patients in at the end of life. So this is going to be a show of hands because normally it'd be discuss on your tables and then feedback, but we have to do it quickly. So how prepared are you? So who has a will? Okay. That's much more than the European Association of Palliative Care Specialists. Much more. There was about a third of them. They've worked all their life in palliative care and none of them had a will. Who has legal power of attorney for health and welfare? Just a few of us. I gave one daughter legal power of attorney for finance and the other for health and welfare, and the third, I didn't. I think she would switch my ventilator off because she's got a different view on life, of what's important and what isn't. Advanced care plan. This is early. One thing I would like to say to Roz, if I could work with all of you, is to actually hand over advanced care planning to the population. So it is organic from the population, which happens more in the States than here. A funeral plan, or have you talked to your loved ones about what fun you'd like to have at your funeral, or fun you'd like them to have, maybe? And home and finance in order. Okay, so fewer numbers. So even if we're just talking about funerals, there are loads of things to think about. Who would you want to be there? Who might not you want to be there? Do you want to be buried or cremated or other? And you can see this slightly gory picture I've put up. Just a couple of days ago, there was a newspaper article, I don't know if it's welcoming or anyway, promoting Europe's first boil-in-the-bag funerals. It sounds like absolutely gory. They heat the body in very large plastic bags with some chemicals, and it completely liquefies. So coming to a funeral director near you sometime. But there will be a whole mass of new types of funerals that we're going to have to worry about. Body disposal. So how many would just prefer to leave it to somebody else? And some of you do that because you know what your loved ones will do, and you have perhaps more confidence in that. So why might it be important to reflect on our own death and, of course, the aftermath of our death, what we're leaving behind for everybody else? Is it a personal responsibility? Is it an altruistic act, like we heard from James, to put some things in order? So I've got a few things here on the slide. I put the arrow because I started sort of rather from an egocentric position. We might want to think about our own death, make an advanced care plan, talk to our loved ones, because we personally want to have a good death. Maybe we want to think and reflect on death because we want to stop being afraid of death itself. And if we can do that, then to live the best we can of the rest of the life that is left to us. Or maybe we want to reflect not to leave chaos and problems for those who are left behind. And then finally on the list, I've got to have greater empathy for our patients and their loved ones. But actually, this process of reflecting on our own anxieties about end of life, our anxieties about death, our anxieties about what after, it's really important to have greater insight, greater empathy. You all got masses of empathy, but occasionally you will come across situations where it's just beyond your imagination. But having reflected more deeply on what you are afraid of, you may find that you have a better understanding of why some people are very afraid of certain aspects of suffering as they get towards the end of life. So what prompts us to think about our own mortality? James also used the symbol of a clepsydra. That's a Greek word for water running away, but in our language it's egg time. But you know what I mean? It's following, the sand is flowing away, it's marking the flowing of time. On the right-hand side, I've got a more decrepit one, which is tied up with string. And so as I'm getting older, I'm thinking, yeah, it's time for me to think about my mortality because I'm becoming a bit more decrepit. Please shout out, what prompts you to think about your own death?
People I've went to school with have passed away.
Yeah, that's really shocking. When people of your own age group, either at school or university or whatever, pass away, that really brings you up with a shock. Anybody else?
I had to bury my mom 2 months ago.
I'm sorry.
And the whole experience for me was quite horrible, and I thought I would never put this on my own daughter. So I had to think about just making the pathway for them after I'm gone much easier than I had before my mom.
So I'm sorry to hear about the loss of your mum, and that gave you a real insight to be able to...
Caribbean people, trust me, it's all complicated. It has to be.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Anybody else?
Being given the diagnosis of a potentially terminal illness.
Yes, so terminal illness. Maybe terminal illness in somebody else that you love as well.
Losing parent at a young age. So my dad was 42 when he died.
I'm sorry.
Like all of us sort of had that hanging over us.
Yes, so when a loved one dies very young and you're the next generation as you're approaching that age, that can be very significant. Thank you. Well, here are some pictures. It may be going to the funeral of a friend, somebody in our own year group, COVID obviously woke us all up to the risk of mortality, maybe through our work, or a potentially serious diagnosis in our loved ones. Back in the old days, I mean medieval times and a bit more recently, people did not want to have a sudden death because they wanted to prepare, they wanted to hand over their wisdom. These days, many people say they might want to die, at least in their sleep. So I think this isn't just two categories. I've put unexpected death versus longer-term illness. Of course, it's not like that, because the unexpected death could be a quiet death in sleep in somebody who has a terminal illness, or it could be completely unexpected. For example, the recent air crash tragedy, when nobody's expecting something as terrible. What would you want for yourselves? Would you prefer to go quickly and unexpectedly, or would you prefer to be there and have your loved ones round your bedside? I know it's a bit artificial to ask that, so let's go with the first one. Yeah, a few people, or one or two people would like to go quickly. Yeah, more, yes. Yeah, and not know anything about it. And the rest of you? But as long as you had good palliative care colleagues around you, yeah? So you all are very familiar with the holistic approach. Could you just take a moment to remember some or one of your patients that had particular suffering, some type of suffering that you really feel that you could not deal with? Could be physical, it could be in any of the four spheres. Didn't want to die. And we...
He was focusing on his wife and telling her, you didn't care about me, you don't care about me. But she looked after him, she looked after his parents when they passed away as well. And eventually, as he deteriorated when he couldn't speak, he was wanting to speak.
So our colleague has said that she cared for a patient who didn't want to die, and he was blaming his wife for not looking after him well, although she looked after him and his parents. And then finally, when he wanted to communicate more, he couldn't. And sometimes people don't want to die because they feel they still have something left to do. It's suddenly they're, woken up with the shock that they're going to die, and life has slipped away. Anybody else? Particular thing? Yes.
Intervention, and it was hard. I actually, I was on the very last day when I extubated, and although I heard he passed away the day after, but it was tragic for the whole month to see him like that.
So a traumatic young man who had a very severe stroke, and his wife just did not want him to die, although the medics all said, and everybody said there was no chance, and it was very traumatic. So in these spheres, usually when I talk with a palliative care audience, they are pretty confident that colleagues will look after the pain, shortness of breath, suffering aspect. So I can see a little bit of nodding here. Well, you hope. What about other things like social isolation, loneliness? We heard about fear of loneliness. Being dependent, and that's one of the things that many people are concerned about as we're approaching the vote on Friday. Will people be worried that they are a burden to others and therefore ask for a physician-assisted suicide? Well, we can look at some of these. If you just look at these blocks and then shout out any one. I mean, of course, I've missed masses of things, but tell me other things that you think you personally would be afraid of as you're approaching the end of life?
Falling through the cracks.
Yeah.
Say 50% of the patients that I see in the community around the life have not been referred to palliative care and not in the system, and they are suffering alone in the community, and no one's talked to them and don't know anything about it.
Very, very important. So failure of recognition and also not linking in with the system.
Cultural differences.
Cultural differences, thank you. The people who are caring for you not recognising your own cultural needs. Being bedbound. So dependent on others.
Poor standards of care.
Sorry?
Poor standards of care.
Poor standards of care.
Being alone, not having family, not having anyone there.
And in London, as a region, has the highest proportion of over 65s living alone. It varies from borough to borough, but it is extraordinarily high. And therefore, I'm doing some training for domiciliary care workers, and the number of people they are caring for who are completely alone. The care workers are the only people that their clients see, the only people, and they're dying. It's unbelievably sad. So moving more on to the most difficult sphere, which contains religious and spiritual, but more existentialist suffering. And a couple of quotes here. So we're all born differently with multitudinous different characteristics, but when we die, we are just the same as everybody else. We all die. And Martin Heidegger said, every man is born as many men, well, women as well, because this is an audience girl power, but of course with appropriate acknowledgement of our male colleagues. But if I take death into my life and acknowledge it, say, yeah, it is going to happen, and face it on, hopefully we can free ourselves from being afraid of death. It's not that easy. I keep giving this workshop and I'm still not there, but I'm practicing it. And this is a reason why we need to reflect on our own death, because actually the fear of dying prevents us from doing many things and sort of hangs over us like a sword of Damocles. And Epictetus said, well, none of us are going to escape death, but we could, with practice, escape the fear of it. Is anyone not afraid of dying? Would you feel comfortable to share with colleagues why?
I'm not afraid of death, I'm afraid of suffering.
Thank you. Any other colleagues?
I'm more afraid of living with some sort of incurable neurological condition than I am of dying of something.
Thank you. Can you hear that? So our colleague is more afraid of living with an incurable neurological condition than of dying. Yes, if you believe in life after death, that may give you greater comfort.
I think for me, given the work I do in a care home, if I get to the point where I feel I've reached a good age, I'm embracing it. But I think the scary part is if I feel I'm still too young.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And when I gave this talk at the European Association of Palliative Care, it was interesting in the audience. We again had quite a small number of people not afraid of death. In fact, there were only 4 out of 60, so a bit more here. And all 4 people had had a near-death experience. They'd had a serious medical condition, and having got so close to death, they'd come back from the brink and no longer feared it. Did you want to share with us?
I mean, I'd rather die from being able-bodied than to live till 99 and confined to a chair. So, it's quality of life, not quantity, I guess.
Okay, thank you. And what about what happens afterwards? So some people will have a faith, and that will support them in thinking about what happens after death. if you're not quite so confident in your faith, or maybe you don't have a faith, you may accept nothingness, or you may be left with anxieties about it. Again, I go back to Marcus Aurelius, because he says, he hedges his bets. He says, if there are no gods, because back in his day there were lots of gods, then you'll be gone. That's it. So he wanted to believe in the gods, that there would be an afterlife for him, but he said, well, I can't be sure, so if there aren't any, but if you have lived well, that will stay for those who are left behind. And I think that's a nice and sort of comforting thought if you're really not sure about what's going to happen after death. The other thing that makes people often fearful of death is all the things they can't do. They can't see their children or their grandchildren growing up, or they can't achieve their Olympic gold medal, or write the best book on palliative care, or many other things. Maybe somebody shout out, what things would you be afraid of losing if you were to die today? Children grow up. Yeah, that's a good. So that your husband would marry somebody else. Yeah, that's a really good one. Millie said, thank you. Connections with other people. Anything else? Rose, what do you want to achieve? How many books?
Oh, no books. As well as seeing what happens to grandchildren, because I'm that old now, I'm sort of quite keen to know what happens to the world, to climate, to everything, really. I'm missing out. Fear of missing out.
Thank you. And it's a really big fear. However, if we start reflecting on death, it makes us wake... Oh, yes, Millie. Oh, 5 minutes. Oh, I thought she was going to contribute. I've got her bell, so she can't ring it at me. So it's thinking about loss, what we might forego, that actually makes us concentrate on the things that are really important to us more intensively every day. Fear also makes it very difficult for us to communicate, and that's important for all of you communicating with your patients and family. And we heard about the importance of art therapy. And indeed, Van Gogh said that even if he too wasn't sure about God, and maybe he'd have to do without him, he says, even though I'm very ill, I need to connect with a greater power, and I do that through art. Obviously, he was a great artist, but everybody has some ability to express themselves, even if they can't in words. So do you think how face dying is important for others? I'm going to have to go a bit quicker. So in the medieval times, there was a guide, how to do it, how to talk to your family, what wise words to say. This is a picture of my mum, who was cared for by St. Peter's Hospice in my home in Bristol with my dad, and we drank a small glass of champagne the day before she died because it was my dad's birthday. But she died with dignity, and I do think that was a lesson for me, that she didn't complain about anything. She was, even though she was suffering, it was the dignity that she transmitted. So, do we have a duty? I think we've heard about the problems from our colleague, and also about digital legacy, that we shouldn't just leave a mess behind for others. So, that is part of our duties, not to leave a mess for my parents, neither of them had a will. So imagine having to deal with financial, clear the house, which is full of stuff. So earlier I showed the Swedish book, Death Cleaning. It's a little tiny book, I recommend it. It's quite good actually when you're approaching retirement as well, how to clear everything and get on top of everything. My children say, I don't want your stuff. They might want the pictures, the digital stuff, but I don't want your china, your blah, 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 your crystal. No. So that's important. Also, we heard about Kohinov's dignity therapy. This is really interesting, and I would like to find a way to do it faster and better, maybe less perfectly than he does, but so everybody can record, and maybe it's through your system, I'll go on the website to have a look, to record what they want their family and loved ones, friends and so on, to know about them and their life. And this is important because it reduces the feeling of guilt to those left behind. So what will you do now? Think about death and enable that to enable you to live life to the full. So 2 quotes, you can perhaps read them later, but don't act as if you've got years and years and years ahead of you. Grasp life and live it now. Maybe for you, more reflection, writing down some of the things that I've perhaps asked you to think about now, and think about your loved ones. Don't leave a mess for them. That is really, really important because it impacts on their grieving process. So is death, he or she, smiling at you? And can you smile back? My dad kept telling me when my mum was dying that Lady Death was coming, and he could see her smiling, but he was Polish, and maybe that's more of a Polish thing. And this is a Polish artist who painted many images of Lady Death smiling. But I get comfort from this, from my rotting, so it sounds a bit awful, from my rotting body, you can imagine it now. No, but the thing is that we return to the earth, and maybe not specifically from my rotting body, but in general, we are part of the creation, and new life, new flowers, new beauty will come from wherever we get buried. So thank you very much for your attention and participating. I hope it's useful. You need to go away and focus, and it takes some time to reflect. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julia. There's lots for us to think about there.